here, and I'm back with the third episode of the iSimplified podcasts. Well, this year has been an eventful year with regard to the cloud computing and its adoptions. Today in this podcast, we have a conversation with Jake. Jake is the Chief Marketing Officer of RPath. He's a seasoned software marketing executive with a strong product strategy and communication background. Welcome, Jake. Great to have you here.
Thank you, Vijay. Good to be here.
Jake, would you like to say something about you and the company you come from?
Sure. So I'm a Chief Marketing Officer for a company called RPath, and RPath is focused on really next-generation data center automation. So we automate construction, the deployment, and the maintenance of software stacks across physical, virtual, and cloud environments. And we're starting to see a tremendous amount of interest in this kind of deployment release automation as it relates to particularly virtualization and cloud computing initiatives where you need to very rapidly deploy new workloads and move them across multiple physical, virtual, and cloud environments.
That's nice to hear. Well, these days a lot of companies are venturing into cloud and aim at moving their business towards it. What do you think is the driving factor behind all this?
So it really depends on how you define cloud, but let me take that from the perspective of private cloud and hybrid clouds, which are really where a lot of the momentum is gathering for enterprises today. Really the primary drivers are really around agility. So there's this long-standing gap that's existed between the world of development and IT. And after an application is functionally complete, it gets thrown on the wall to IT, and then it can take a matter of months to get that application deployed. That's been sort of the frustration that we've dealt with for a long time. But fundamentally, IT has been our cable company or our telephone company. We really haven't had a choice. They've held a local monopoly over the delivery of IT services. But along comes public cloud services like Amazon EC2. And it becomes apparent that there is an alternative and there is a better way. So swipe a credit card, deploy your application in a matter of 15 minutes, and you're off and running. So I think that that's creating two real dimensions within IT today. A, it's leading to applications, rogue applications that are leaking to the cloud, following the path of least resistance. And of course, that has enterprise IT concern, paying attention. Secondly, it really is making IT look bad. So I think the performance characteristics of public cloud services are starting to hold IT to a different expectation for performance. So months won't do when minutes are available, and it's putting pressure on IT to figure out how to create a much more agile approach to IT service delivery. So agility is number one. Number two is cost containment and utilization of capacity. So the ability to deliver services on an on-demand and elastic basis provides a much more efficient model for consuming and providing services. It's just a much more efficient mechanism to deal with IT on a utility basis such as that. So we're starting to see interest around it for really those two driving factors. It's not going to happen overnight. We think that this transformation to IT as a service is going to happen across three different phases. And the first phase is really focused on agile operations. It's just improving your as-is IT delivery model through the use of automation, becoming more efficient and proficient and performant in your ability to deliver IT services to your clients and delivering cloud-like performance characteristics, which is not to say that you're becoming a cloud in your own right. The second phase we see is centered around self-service IT, where IT is starting to delegate some control to their internal customers to remove the bottleneck by delegating responsibility to dev, test, and production groups to deploy their own workloads. And then finally, with the additional elasticity, you start seeing these private hybrid clouds emerge, where IT services are provided and consumed and billed for on an elastic utility basis. So it really is an evolution. We're seeing a tremendous amount of interest that's focused on agility and cost containment, and it's really manifesting in those three ways in our experience.
With regard to cloud, a general myth is that a fully virtualized environment is a private cloud, which essentially is not. What would be your advice for people who think so?
Yeah, so opinions are a dime a dozen with respect to what a cloud actually is, but let me give you my definition. A private cloud is self-service, so control is delegated to internal customers for self-service on-demand consumption and provisioning of new services. So there's a self-service interface or a service catalog or a storefront associated with the initiative. Secondly, it's fully automated, right? So you standardize your infrastructure, you standardize the human labor associated with constructing new systems, generating images, changing those systems over time. So you have deep automation in that environment as well. Then finally, it's elastic, right? So you have elasticity around the provisioning and deprovisioning workloads and the ability to scale and descale those workloads on demand as demand fluctuates. Those are the primary characteristics. Virtualization is a necessary but not sufficient characteristic for defining a cloud environment.
Well, we have almost reached the end of this year, 2010. How do you see the cloud adoptions among different players in the IT industry?
That's a great question. So the second half of this past year of 2010 has really been dominated by private cloud as a theme. So we're starting to see enterprises that are really starting to vote with their budgets and start to initiate early stage private cloud projects. So we're seeing special sort of centers of excellence and special projects form within the office of the CIO around defining that next generation architecture, that next generation data center. So I think that will continue, despite the fact that you really do need considerable operational maturity and automation to scale and sustain a cloud. There's enough interest and enough pressure around making this transformation that I think we're going to start to see some real large-scale private cloud initiatives in 2011. I think we'll also start to see hints of the hybrid cloud, so the ability to move workloads between public and private environments based on optimizations for price and policy and performance and lifecycle stage. And initially that's going to look like a basic stratification across the lifecycle, where you see dev and test workloads running in a public cloud and then production workloads running in a private cloud. But ultimately, I think it's going to become much more sophisticated than that, where the CIO or IT leadership has full control around managing their workloads as a portfolio and optimizing where those workloads run based on circumstances of the business.
Can we put it this way? For example, if an organization is reluctant towards getting to cloud because of the security concerns, they can have their business and information critical applications in private cloud and move their generic routine job executions to the public cloud, thereby which we can have a perfect hybrid atmosphere, right?
Yes, that's absolutely very close to what I think is going to happen, at least in the initial phases.
How much do you see an importance for automation here?
The other thing that I think is going to happen is automation is going to become a primary investment theme for IT. And that's for a number of reasons. The first is that cloud initiatives require it. So this next generation IT delivery model requires deep automation. You need to have on-demand delivery of new services. You need to have reliable, predictable change. You need to have consistent deployments that are going to work for the first time every time, because in this sort of environment there are no do-overs. And finally, when you start to present services on a self-service basis to internal customers, you better be sure that there's the resources in place to respond to the demand that you're creating. So if you're presenting a menu of options, you better be sure that there's cooks in the kitchen, so to speak. In addition to that, there's more pragmatic and sort of practical reasons that automation is going to be the investment theme, and that's related to this need for speed, right? Just becoming more responsive in your as-is IT delivery model, and doing so without adding people, right? So as scale compounds and change accelerates and demands increase in IT, because OpEx budgets have declined significantly, and IT is not doesn't have the appetite to go out and hire lots of people to accommodate these new requirements of change and scale and speed. Automation is the obvious answer. The other thing, there's another byproduct of that investment in automation that I think we're going to see signs of in 2011, and that's fear. Right? So the doers in IT have really built their franchise on the basis of performing these manual tasks and writing clever scripts and essentially being heroes in what they do. And when automation is applied, that can be threatening to these sort of folks. So I think we'll see a split in the ranks between sort of the agents of change who want to automate and really take and really build their brand around allowing this change to take place, and those that are threatened by it, sort of victims of change. So the message becomes, and this is paraphrasing something that Glenn O'Donnell at Forrester says, be the automator, not the automated. So I think we'll see that dynamic playing out in 2011 as well. And to the extent that you've automated things, you have the ability to deliver higher levels of value in the IT organization. And we've seen that over the course of time in IT. There's always initial fear around automation because the thought is that it will commoditize your skill set. In fact, it enables you to deliver higher levels of value. It creates another layer of abstraction that removes you and shelters you from some of the lower level complexity so you can focus on the higher level, more strategic problems in IT. And I think we'll see that as well.
Also must say the big players like Amazon, Google, and Microsoft have pushed the cloud so much in the past year. For example, even Microsoft emphasized so much on the advantages and the opportunities one has with Azure during their PDC event.
Well, I think as it relates to the .NET development ecosystem, the Windows operating environment, Azure has a very strong chance of becoming the elastic deployment environment. So I think we can expect a whole lot of momentum there from Microsoft. As it relates to commodity cloud, public cloud services, on a public basis, Amazon is clearly the dominant player in that space, and I think will continue to be. I think what's going to be interesting, where the change is going to take place in 2011, is the jockeying for position around the private cloud opportunity. I think that's where the real momentum is going to be from an enterprise spending perspective.
One final question. What would be the model which an IT leadership team should take towards cloud adoption?
Oh, that's a big question. I think that there's a couple of different ways to look at this. I laid out the continuum that we think is the right path to follow, treating agile operations, self-service IT, and then finally private hybrid cloud as part of a sort of graduated path to making this transformation. And I would advise treating each of those as both an entry point and a step along the way. So, for example, you're going to be making enhancements to your as-is IT delivery model at the same time that you're defining your next generation data center, right? So our customers are making investments in automation for the purpose of improving the performance of their existing IT at the same time that they're defining the reference architecture for the future of IT. It has to happen in parallel. In terms of how that happens, clearly cloud initiatives are gravitating to non-production workloads first. So we're starting to see a lot of interest around focusing on dev and test before production. That makes a whole lot of sense, using cloud perhaps for disaster recovery, failover, cloud bursting, etc. But I think there's also interest in looking at cloud as the basis for single apps, right? So carve out a single application or a finite set of applications, and they may be production-grade applications, and deploy that on an elastic and utility basis. The key point here is you need to get your feet wet. You need to get your hands dirty. You need to get experience under your belt and start working with the technology today to understand how it's going to fit in your existing environments, how it's going to intersect with your people, process, and technology. You can't do that on whiteboards. You need to do that by getting your hands on the technology and getting some experience under your belt.
Thank you, Jake. Thanks for taking your time and talking to us on the cloud deployment strategies and how you perceive cloud in the year 2011. I'll get back to you soon for a follow-up conversation.
It's my pleasure, Vijay. I appreciate the opportunity and look forward to chatting again.
Thank you, folks, for listening to this podcast. I hope you enjoyed the same. Do let me know your comments at iSimplified.org. Till I see you all with the next episode, it's Vijay signing off. Bye-bye.